Welcome to The Total Woman. I have a treat for you, and it's a treat for me. Susan Turnbull is back with us after 11 years. And your first program, 11 years ago, was so popular, and all of the stations wanted that program because people called in and said, oh, I never knew that. I hope they called you too afterwards. You never know.
Never know. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
but it is wonderful to have you back.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Cheryl.
Of course.
Great to be here.
It's a pleasure. Yeah. You've moved on. You still maintain your original business, but you've expanded it.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, I started off my career as a freelance journalist.
I didn't know that.
And I was writing a lot of personal interest stories. That's what you do if you're a freelance journalist working for local newspapers, which is what I was working at. And I got very good at trying to capture the essence of a person and put it down on the pages of a newspaper. And what struck me about and they were beautiful stories, but a lot of what I learned from those people would end up still on my computer, wouldn't end up in the pages of the newspaper.
Yes.
And the newspaper, for the most part, would probably be turned into the recycling bin or the bottom of the bird cage or something. And I got really interested in, well, how do people think about what's most important to them and capture a bit of the essence of themselves and put it down for themselves on a piece of paper, themselves and their family. And most of the time when people think about trying to create some kind of a record of their life, they think, well, I've got to write a biography, I guess, or an autobiography, or some kind of a memoir, or write an essay on what I've learned in life. And I ran across the idea of what is called an ethical will. I learned this I was introduced to it in 2001, which was a few years before I was here on the show for the first time. And when I learned what an ethical will was, which was a letter form of creating some kind of a record of your life, I thought, that is a beautiful idea. Everybody can do that kind of a thing. You don't have to write something that's long and involved. So at that point, I kind of pivoted my writing and really started focusing on ethical wills. And I started ghostwriting them because I had those skills to do that. I started marketing my services through financial advisors, estate planning attorneys, because their clients were sort of thinking about legacy. And I wrote a guidebook. So when I was first on the show in 2011, you showed the first guidebook. Yeah, now this is now the fourth edition of the guidebook. And I've learned a lot over the years in working with people and giving presentations about this topic. And one of them is that when people hear the term ethical will, they say, oh God, you put ethical and will? That sounds very stern. It sounds very complicated.
Yes.
It
and
sounds
very restrictive.
Serious.
Yes.
It sounds like it has to be about ethics and it must be legal if it has that term ethical will. And it's the opposite of all those things. Ethical wills are simple. They're lovely. Anyone can do them, and they're not legal.
Oh, they're not legal.
They're not legal. It's a personal legacy document, and they are love letters. They're an opportunity for a person to think about what they never want to go. When essentially they want to make sure that their loved ones know from them without question. To put it down in a beautiful personal format of a letter, which these days is quite old-fashioned.
I still write letters.
Well, yeah, and who throws a letter away? People do not throw letters away. No, they don't. Especially now, they don't. And this letter is intended, it's different than other letters because it's intended to live beyond you. So it can be shared during life, can be shared during life. It's beautiful to share during life, and think of it as a work in progress that you might add to or change. But essentially, it's intended to be shared, to be kept, and to be kept and treasured after you're no longer here. So in the intervening years since I've been here, I've continued to ghostwrite documents. I've traveled all over the country doing presentations and workshops, and have really had a chance to see up close the power of this idea. And the power of the simplicity of the idea. And where I have grown and expanded the business is about this whole idea of what's legacy. Legacy is another one of those terms like ethical will, which is very stern sounding. And very vague sounding. And a little bit scary.
Well, wills in general scare people.
Well, but so does the idea of legacy. You know, you think about someone who's left a legacy, you think about someone that's probably related to money, and they're probably someone's quite exceptional in some way if they've left some kind of a legacy. And I've really come to understand that legacy, by my definition, legacy is your influence. Mm-hmm. Very simple. Mm-hmm. Your influence in the lives of other people. And when you think about it that way, it's something that applies in your life all the time, and that applies to everybody.
Yes.
And that is a combination of what's tangible, what you give that's tangible, and of course, we organize the way people write wills and think about their legacy and what they're going to leave behind. We pay lawyers a lot of money to figure out how we're going to transmit what's tangible.
Yes. Money and objects.
Money and objects. Mm-hmm. Where people are really the most influential is not in money and objects. It's what they hold that's not tangible.
Yes, the personal part.
The personal part, their character, their values.
The relationships.
The relationship, how they feel, what they've learned, who they love, what they stand for. Those sorts of things are really more important to most people to give and more important to receive than the money. So so in my presentations, I remind people of everything they have to give. And that's the question. What do you have to give? It's both tangible and intangible in your life, and
have you been doing it?
Here. And have you been doing it? Yes. Are you living true to what you say you want to give?
Yes.
That's a really powerful question.
Yes.
What do you want to give, and are you giving it? And when you're no longer here, will people feel like you have given it? So an ethical will is one of the ways that you can give information, feelings, lessons learned, values. You can capture some of that in an ethical will. Does an ethical will capture everything about you? No, because you're living it.
Yes,
because
of
you're
course.
living it. But it's a way to capture in a short space. They tend to be no longer than 20 pages, somewhere between 1 and 20 pages. So when people hear about one is and when they get it, when they say, oh, it's not so stern, it's not long and involved, it's not complicated, I could do this, then the light bulbs go off in people's heads, and the act of creation ends up being incredibly rewarding.
Yes.
Incredibly rewarding, because you sit down and say, well, what is important to me? What have I learned?
Yes.
What are the messages that I really do want to live beyond me? And then what are the conversations I want to have during my life? So, and how are there relationships I want to repair? What do I still want to do?
Yes, I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
Sure.
So it's valuable and relevant for people of any age. So, as I got working with people, I got really also interested in, okay, well, most of the way that we communicate what we've learned, what's important to us, are some of the stories of our lives, isn't just in writing. It's not in writing. Most of them is not in writing. And I really wanted to help people have conversations they might not otherwise have.
Yes.
And so I created a new tool, and this is what you haven't seen. So I created these cards. And these are 12 conversation cards. And they are intended to get a conversation going that, as I said, that you might not otherwise have, whether it's with a client, whether it's a member of your family, whether it's with friends. And what is remarkable about using these cards, and here I can just show you, I can show the audience basically what they're like. So it's a verb, and then followed by a couple of short words. So recall a choice you made based on a personal value. Is an example of one of these. So we make choices all the time based on personal values.
Yes.
You decided to buy the shirt on sale instead of full price.
Yes.
That's a choice you made based on a personal value.
Yes.
So it's not hard to talk about values when you can put a story behind it.
That's true. That's very true.
So that's true with so many topics. And if you give people a path in to telling a story about their lives or something they've learned or a chance to express what's important to them, they will go to town.
Was this your idea?
It was my idea.
This is a great idea.
Well, these are incredible to see. what happens instantly, how they get people talking. So these have been really fun to work with.
These.
Yeah, and they're also a great way of not only an icebreaker or in an office situation, but like around a holiday table, just to use them as a game. You know, give people a chance to talk about one they might like to talk about, or you turn them over and then you're surprised by what you see, and it's an opportunity to tell a story. And so they've been just magical to watch the impact that they have on people. It's not uncommon to have people be completely surprised by what they end up talking about.
I bet.
And it goes a whole lot deeper more quickly than they ever imagine. So it's another one of those experiences of just being surprised by actually, just like when you write a legacy letter, you actually have a lot to say.
Yes. Once you start thinking about it.
Once you start thinking about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll bet.
Right, and have an audience might be interested. So
I believe in stories. I always have. I was raised in a family that did stories.
Yeah.
And not stories that weren't about us, stories about us.
Yeah.
That stories would be passed down, and sometimes my children will say, oh, I've heard that. And then they'll say, do it again. I got to hear it again.
Right.
Because they are all discoveries. They're all things that happened that you didn't expect. Or you were expecting something and something else wonderful happened as a result of it.
Right. There's always a reason to tell a story.
Yes,
Yeah.
and my dad was a great storyteller, and I like to think I got that from him. I can make a story out of standing in line at the grocery store.
Yeah.
Because there is a story there.
Right.
Now, it may not be something you would want to write in this situation, but I virtually never go out without coming home and saying, you're never going to believe what happened.
Right.
Because people are so responsive if you're the person that it starts it.
Right.
And that's what these do.
Right.
That's
Or if you
exactly
really show
the
a
same
genuine
thing.
interest. If you show
Well,
a genuine
why wouldn't
interest.
you be interested?
Yeah.
Every person on the face of the planet's interesting.
Right.
At least I think they are.
Right. But there are a lot of people who say, well, I don't have any stories really, or my life hasn't been that interesting, and I don't really know how to tell a story, or if I told a story, it might fall flat. So actually, it's easy for you to tell stories.
Because I've done it all my whole life.
Because you've done it all your life. But a lot of people don't have that kind of view of themselves.
Yes.
But it's wonderful when you put something like this in front of them, they prove to themselves they actually really do have a lot of stories to tell, and that people are interested.
Yes, every
So,
one of these is a story.
Exactly.
Just waiting to come out.
Just waiting to come out. So this also works really well for sort of a structure if you want to create like a mini memoir.
Yes.
If you wanted to interview somebody and use these.
Yes.
As a way to get a prompt. It's like 12 slices of life. It's not a chronological telling. It's 12 slices of life. You could get a really clear picture of someone from just 12 stories. So that's one way that they're used. So people have used them as a structure for videotapes. They've used them as a structure for writing. And as I said, they're wonderful icebreakers. They're wonderful games. So when I first did these, you'll see that these are small and they have nothing on the back.
Yes.
So some people said to me, I love these. He said, great conversations going, but I actually really want to have you give me a path.
Oh, a path.
So this large set is, they look the same on the
Yes,
front,
the design. The
but
design is
back-
great, by the way. I wanted to
Oh, thank
comment
you.
that. I love every one of these. They're great.
Well, they need to be beautiful, tactile. So because you're talking, these are wonderful conversations. So the tool needs to be wonderful, feel wonderful, look wonderful. But anyway, this is a three-step set of follow-up prompts. Let's really develop the story. Like what actually happened when you're talking about describe a place you love? What's something that happened there? And then what's the context behind that? What are the values that reveals? What does that say about what's important to you, that story? And then if you feel like going here, then you can go to the third step, which is leads to action, which is where professionals oftentimes use this. How are we going to talk about how are the values that you've just revealed to me, how do they apply to the planning that we're doing, or the philanthropy, the gift you want to give?
Yes.
Or other actions you might want to take that are derived from these values. So it goes from story to values to action.
I love this.
Yeah, so that's the last tool. So I have had nothing but it's been an incredibly rewarding, creative
I'm sure
process,
it has been.
you know, to do these and then to see them in action. So one thing that happened last week was that the Jewish Community Foundation of Hartford has brought me in several times to do events for their donors, and this year they are having what they're calling the Year of Giving, and 12 months where they're having programs, and they're using these cards, one of these cards every month, to develop a blog post around the card.
Wow. Oh, doesn't that give you chills?
I mean,
That's
these blog posts are amazing. So the last one that was written was on the card, highlight an accomplishment that reflects what's important to you. And the staff member that wrote the blog told this amazing story about how she was born in Italy, and her parents came here. Actually, I'm not sure she was born in Italy. I think she was born in the United States, but her parents were Italian. They were born in Italy. And she was always a little bit unsure about how she felt about her Italian heritage. Her parents had accents. They had food. She ate food that the rest of her friends didn't eat. She was always a little bit embarrassed and not sure how to think about her Italian heritage. And the older that she got, the more she really started caring about it. And she decided she really wanted to claim her Italian citizenship, which she could, because then her children could also be Italian, have Italian, have a dual citizenship. So she tells this story about moving from, as a teenager, being embarrassed to this kind of realization this is what she wanted, and then the story of her actually getting her citizenship. And that was the accomplishment that reflects what's most important to her. So she tells this in one blog, it's not very long, this amazing journey that she has gone through. And so it's a beautiful blog. So I wrote her and said, this is beautiful. And I'm so moved that you used this card. And what was the process like for you to do this?
Yes.
And she said, you know, having the card made all the difference, because it helped me solidify my thoughts, and I wouldn't have made the connections if I hadn't had the card.
Isn't that great?
Yeah. So this
doesn't
is
it
what
make you feel wonderful?
So this is what the cards do. This is exactly what the cards do. So that's just another beautiful example that I wanted to share. So it's
I'm
been
thinking
a fun
everybody
little
should have
adventure.
these cards.
Well, I think so too. But
I'm serious. Trace a theme that runs through your life. And you don't have to think very long before something comes up, and then another one, and another one, and another one.
Right.
I mean, we don't just have one trailing thing.
Yeah.
Well, if we're lucky, we have a whole bunch.
Right.
But I love this idea of it unlocks something. It makes it okay to talk about something.
Right.
Even if you never talk to somebody about it. If you
Right.
just write it down,
Yeah.
it means something.
It does. It
Yes.
does. So, and one card will go a long way. So,
Yes.
I'm not
Yes.
suggesting that you go through all 12 cards
Yes.
by any means. You know, one card will get you going.
But this is the beginning of a legacy.
Well, it is in terms of thinking about what you have to give.
Yes.
You've got those stories to give.
Yes.
You've got the values to give. You've got your whatever lesson you learned from that story. You have that all to give. And if someone didn't ask you, or you didn't have the chance to think about it or talk about it in quite that way, you wouldn't have given it. So, or the person who's listening to you has lost the opportunity to get it, I guess is what is a better way of saying it. So this is all part of the sort of soup of what's legacy.
Yes.
And I don't like to put legacy in this box, you know,
Yeah.
that it's just something that happens out there to other
Yes.
people. This is something that you create every day. And it's a result of how you're living, the relationships that you have, and what you stand for.
Yes.
And the influence that you are, whether you know how you're being influential or not. And most people don't really understand the depth of the influence that they have upon other people,
Yes.
whether they know them or not.
It's
They
true.
don't know.
I'm sure that's true.
They don't know.
Yeah. Well, I was raised that there's nothing more important than people. Period. There's nothing more important.
That's why you do what you do.
That's why I do what I do, yes. And I feel that way. My relationships with friends, my relationships with colleagues, I always think it's always an opportunity for me. Every new person is a door to open. Every new person has
that's an adventuresome
a story.
attitude, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the great thing is that once you get to know them, they begin to do this. with you. They begin to, well, I'm a sponge anyway, and my children always say I have a neon sign on me that says talk to me, because it happens with total strangers.
Right,
I
right.
guy I just look like I'm open to talk, and I am. But how enriched my life is because of that.
Yeah.
And how much I learn. I learned so much. It's like doing this program. I've learned a great deal just
Right.
sitting
I'm sure
here
you have. I'm sure you have.
just right here with
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
I've learned a lot.
Yeah.
And you walk away thinking, that was a good half hour. I'm starting to think about this. I'm
Right.
starting to think of how to help other people do this. I probably wouldn't have much trouble with any of this stuff.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't. You probably
But I appreciate the fact that other people do.
yeah, yeah.
And
You
they're
know-
missing something.
Yeah. You know, another story to tell you is this also happened to me last week. I was on the phone with someone who was a father and a son. And the father had seen the guidebook and was kind of excited, or originally kind of excited that he would write something down. And then we're talking about kind of the process we might follow if he partnered with us to actually do this. I hear him kind of pause, and he says, actually, I don't know if I want to do this. This is just too much about me. This feels too much of an egotistical exercise.
It's an interesting observation.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I really have that much to say. So I don't think I really want to do this after all. So then the son says, Dad, I want this.
Of
Do
course
this
he
for
does.
me. I want this. And there's so much that I don't know about your life. And I want you to do this for me, and I want you to do this for the children that I hope that I will have. And so the father made all the difference to the father.
Of course it did. Of
Because
course.
a lot of people's that's not, and I said to him, this is not an unusual reaction. A lot of people will say, well, that feels too self-centered to me. And I don't want to write a lecture. And no, you don't want to write a lecture, but you're creating a love letter. And if the only thing that you say to them is a paragraph that says, thank you, you made a huge difference in my life, and this is how you made a difference in my life. If that's the only thing you said,
That's right.
wow, what a beautiful gift. So that's why I say to people when they're thinking about creating a legacy document like this or a legacy letter is don't overcomplicate it. Don't make it long. Start with something really short. Maybe it's just a page. Maybe it's just a paragraph. Think about something that would be really easy for you to say right off the bat.
Yes.
And for most people, it's an expression of love or gratitude.
Yes.
And set it aside, date it, sign it in case something happened to you tomorrow.
Yeah.
But you've said the most important thing.
Yes.
What you felt like was the most important thing. You can, and then make sure people write a note that says, this is what I've done, put it with your other papers if it's not with the other papers.
Yeah.
And then you can always go back to it.
Sure.
So don't overcomplicate it, but don't not do it.
Yes. And it can be
So-
a series of things
And it
too.
can be, exactly.
Yes, it can
a
be
series of
answering
things.
these kinds of
It can be a
questions
series of
in
things.
separate sheets of paper.
Exactly. Mine is actually, people say, well, have you written one?
I bet they do. Yes.
And my response is, yeah, but it may be a major disappointment because people are going to think it's the most beautiful document that's ever been written. But, it's just me.
It's your document.
It's
yeah.
my document. And so it's a collection. It's exactly what it is. It's not just one document. It's actually a collection. When I feel like writing something, then I'll write it and put it in the file. So that takes the weight off of it. So that's what I want to do, is to remind people that this is a beautiful thing you've done
Yes.
out of love. Let's take the weight off of it.
Yes. I think that's great.
Yeah.
I had a friend who wrote letters to all of the people she loved.
Yeah.
She was ill, and she probably wasn't going to survive, and as
Yeah.
it turned out, she didn't. And you get this letter.
Oh my gosh, is there anything more precious
Oh
than
my
that?
gosh.
Yeah, that's what this is.
I mean, I didn't open it for a long time.
Really?
Oh yeah, because
seemed too
I knew it
precious?
was, yes, exactly. And I had it on my desk, and I looked at it for the longest time.
yeah.
And I thought, I want to open it. I want to know what she said. But I just loved the idea
Yeah.
that she'd thought about
Right,
that beforehand.
right, exactly.
And-
Think how loved you felt.
Yes,
Right,
absolutely.
and appreciated.
Yes. And it seems, when you were talking about writing, longhand writing.
Yeah, longhand, or it can be typed. It can be,
I know.
certainly most
I'm
people are gonna
obsessed
type
with
it.
longhand because they don't teach it in schools
I know,
anymore, and I think
yeah.
it's terrible.
Yeah, I do too.
But I write a letter to someone, and I'm amazed. Sometimes it's just a thank you note, and people will say, "I have everything you've ever written me."
Yeah,
I make the cards too, but still,
yeah.
it's such
People
a
don't throw them away.
no.
Yeah.
Well, their children will, but
Well,
we can't do anything,
can't do anything about that.
That's right. This has been great.
Well, thank you for your interest.
I just love, I'm always interested in what you're doing. And we're going to have you back much sooner.
Well, great.
Because I'd like to hear what happens with this.
Yeah,
I mean, this is really new.
Yeah, it is new. Well, I mean, actually, these are like 5 years old. It's not that new. This is quite new. But the cards took a long time to develop, actually.
I'll bet.
Well, because there's only 12, but I wanted to get the text exactly right. I needed to get the
Sure.
images exactly right. Get the, the design, the weight. These are custom-made boxes.
Sure.
I mean, I went to a lot of trouble to really make something quite unique.
But you can tell that. These are beautifully done. They're perfectly cut. Look at them line up.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing is cut improperly.
Yeah.
The quality of the paper is
Yeah, it had to
excellent.
be, yeah.
It isn't too shiny. It isn't too flat. The color is beautiful. The photography is beautiful. A lot of time and effort went into these.
Yeah.
And as a result, people will treasure them.
Yeah. Another thing that's special is that these are my daughter's photographs.
Oh, I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
Because my daughter's a professional photographer. I
Yeah.
said, these are very nice.
Yeah, so that's another thing that was really special about creating them, was that, we worked together on the images.
It's great. It's really great. And this is another step for you in expanding
Definitely.
what you've been doing all along. We were saying beforehand that it's so rewarding.
Yeah, well, and like you, I'm a creative person. I like to create. I like the creative aspect of it, and to keep growing and challenging myself.
It's creative and it involves people. Yeah, my favorite two things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for.
You're welcome. It's
having
such a pleasure. It is really such a pleasure. I'm so happy to see you again.
Likewise.
I hope you enjoyed our time with her. It's really been special. Thank you for being with us this evening on The Total Woman. Well, you're used to hearing me say, welcome to The Total Woman, but we decided it might be nice if you learned a little bit about our history. It changes. I keep rewriting it. This is the most recent version. During the many years of hosting various programs on our local public access channel, I noticed that many women were crewing on numerous shows, but didn't have a production that was just for them. I wanted to create a program that was made by women for women. Guests would be interviewed in a comfortable setting, ta-da, in the hopes that the viewer would feel like they were the third person in the conversation. The crew would be all female, and production issues would be discussed and decided upon by the group as a whole. That was the concept, and The Total Woman was the result.